this one I love. My favorite of yours. We're gonna save that to the end. But this one I really liked a lot, and I thought that the interesting thing about it is that it's not over blended, right? I mean, you were very...
I was conscious about that.
Yeah, and you've laid it in. It looks like your values are basically right. You gave me a picture of it to look at, which was your source shot. By the way, so tell me about the cat
Yeah, this is my cat, Leslie.
She's passed away?
She has, yes. So this is kind of my tribute to her.
Right.
I have her on my wall all the time. But yeah, she was always bright-eyed, kind of wonderment. She was very lovey cat, at least to me.
Right.
But then sometimes she had a little other side where she'd get bite.
Right.
She'd be like licking me, and then
Right.
So she was a lot of fun. Yeah, I miss her.
Let's go back and talk about sort of your history with art and how long you've been painting and everything else. What was the?
Well, I've probably been painting for, I don't know, close to 40 years, probably somewhere in my mid-teens started to paint. I always was drawing, even as a kid. Before, kindergarten, I was always drawing, and then, started painting. Most of it was in watercolor and acrylics. It's probably about a year or so ago that I started dabbling with oil and seeing how that would work.
Oh, wow.
I did it once in college, one class in oil. I didn't have a good experience with it. I was mixing it and turning it out in mud, and, and the instructor wasn't overly helpful. But, and then I just kind of like, all right, I'm not doing this anymore.
Right, and how long ago? That was back in college?
That was back in college.
Yeah.
So it's probably been, not to date myself, but probably 30-some years since college, and that I haven't, that I just strictly worked in watercolor and acrylic.
So when you got back into oil, what was what method were you using? Were you just...
I was just trying to see how to use it. So I just started to look for videos and how to paint with oil. Just wanted to see give it another chance.
So you just got on YouTube?
Yeah. And I tried some different things, and then I found your site, and I just loved the paints.
Good.
and all the different mixings and the mediums and all that. And it's all there. So that made it great. And just the actual technique that you teach, it really kind of resonated with me.
Yeah.
It made it seem like, okay, I can do this. Let me give this a shot.
Yeah.
And I've enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah.
Really, more so than anything I've done.
Well, we're going to get into I'm going to show everybody the self-portrait you did, which kind of blew me away. And one of the things, and not to get ahead, we're going to talk about that one in a minute, but the likeness, you got the likeness, and I thought, where did you get those skills? Because that's something that, even people that can paint realism well, if they try to get a likeness, they kind of missed it. But it was funny because when I went outside to meet you immediately, I said, "Oh, that's a self-portrait," because I recognized you. But it was anyway. But the reason I brought that up, I was just wondering, what your history was and what where you learned it.
Yeah. Well, I went to Otis Art Institute in California for 2 years in Los Angeles, and then I transferred to Parsons in New York. So I had a lot of drawing, in those classes.
Yeah, right. Okay.
And especially in the first couple of years, like the foundation years,
Right.
it was just like several drawing classes with some really good teachers too.
Yeah, great.
And just that's really kind of how I.
Right. So now you're living in Texas, and you just gotten back into oil so recently. I mean, I had no idea. I guess I try not to read too much in the emails. I wanted so we can talk about it, but I just thought, wow. So let me just give you some criticism on this one. Again, I love the painting. It's almost, I don't know, some of the values, and I looked at, I'll tell you what, if you don't mind, I'll grab this source picture that you gave me. And so the first question I have is, obviously, now was this the exact same picture that you worked from? Or
it's not the same picture, it's a different reproduction of the picture.
Right. So what I mean is this is clearly more yellow and more, was that like the also the source, or did you change
no,
that?
it's just, where the place you print them, like I went to like a 1 hour printer thing to do
Yeah.
this, because I didn't have the source picture anymore, so this is just kind of how
So
it came
this is
out.
probably different
It's
than the one
probably-
you
it
worked
is,
from.
yeah, a
I
little
gotcha.
different,
Okay.
yeah.
So I won't ask you why the color is.
Yeah, this is more to her color.
Yeah, well, one of the things, the colors are very muted, and that kind of always works. If you start with dirty colors, then things don't get carried away, and you don't kind of make a lot of those amateur mistakes, when you sort of amp up the color a lot. So I think to begin with, the colors are nice and dirty, and so that's why the red nose is not overdone, and it works. And I'm supposed to give you criticism about the painting, but I think that, if anything, it would be, I don't really have any direct criticism for it. I could sit here and say, the subtlety of the whiskers, is very nice. It would be very typical for an amateur to over-define these whiskers and draw them in much more. And it looks to me like you haven't done that. They've gone a little blue. Mm-hmm. Which is a product of white mixing with the black, and so you could have thrown a little bit of burnt umber into these whiskers that don't have quite the warmth that the rest of the light does, right? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
They're a little bit sort of grayish,
Yep.
which is blue. Gray equals blue. So that's kind of a milky, burnt umber is sort of, always gets rid of the milk, or orange, burnt umber being a very dark value of the orange. So, but that's just, maybe, for instance, this line here is a little more defined than that one. You kind of lose it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I always love to lose a line. The other thing would be, there's just maybe the slightest bit of over-defining things a little bit. I don't know, maybe not. You did a nice job on, I have that question, right? Which is more subtle? So that
Exactly.
when you're comparing one thing to another, the typical thing is to put in, for instance, these lines on the forehead to draw them in with a much stronger pattern than is really there. And you're not guilty of that. So we're just going to have to move on. I don't want to be too picky with it. But anyway, it's I like it a lot. And painting like this will look a lot better with a frame on it.
Yes.
Some really are helped by that. And I think that this one with a big fat border frame would be nice. So all right.
All right.
Okay, so this one is my least favorite of the three. And I always have to pick one that's my least favorite. There's a lot I like about it. I like that it's kind of just funky, It's not just the composition is real interesting. And again, it's sort of, this is not having to do with realism, but if you put a nice frame around it, it still is a nice painting. Mm-hmm. It still would be a nice, something I would hang, in my home. Maybe not in my living room, but down in the down in the basement or something. No, what I mean is it's got, but now let's talk about where where it could be improved strictly in realism. And I think number one, I would say that the photo you picked is really very much sort of like a cell phone.
Yes, exactly. Is what it is.
Real close up, and so you get all those weird distortions that you do. Cell phone cameras, especially the new ones, are so good. But they all still have fisheye lenses, which drives me crazy. They distort. So there's a lot of that going on, right? And so here's what I would ask you if I was saying, I would say that you have some value problems, and so I would say, well, why, here's this light area right here, and here it's nowhere near that light, right?
No,
So and I could sit here and pick out a bunch of areas. And you're full aware. So if I said to you, explain to me, why did you paint that the wrong value? What was what happened there?
Just that is, it just seemed a little too dark to me, and I wanted to just bring it out a little bit more.
Yeah.
And that's just trusting what I'm seeing and trying to overcompensate for it. I didn't want it to be in total shadow.
So you intentionally were trying to change and kind of take liberties.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you're on your own when you do that.
Yeah, you really are.
But what I would say is that you probably liked the photo because
Well, what I
You know,
like
the cat
about the cat is the pose.
Mm-hmm.
She was really was the queen, and that's why I put her on the throne.
Right.
And the just the way she held her little paw, it was quite an elegant, like classy, like
Yeah.
royal type look to me. So that's why I really used the picture. I really like the pose. And,
Yeah.
and I figured it'd sit nice in the throne.
So and clearly you took a lot of artistic liberty with this to
Yeah.
do your own thing.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to get into it and really, you've explained yourself well enough. But yeah, anytime that you start changing values, even I like to have something to look at, because it's that's where you really get into trouble. So,
Yeah.
all right, let's look at the last one, which is my favorite.
Okay.
So this is my favorite, and this is one of those that, I can probably sit here and really find a few little value problems or whatever. I'm looking now. This little thing is a little dark. I could get real nitpicky. But let me just first of all say what I like about it. And again, I think that what it is it's a great likeness, which is something that, and it's also a wonderful expression. This is, had a long career as a portrait artist, so it's something that I think a lot about is expressions. And it's actually very hard to get an expression that's not contrived, not a big smile, not a pleasant, but that expresses character. I mean, John Singer Sargent was a master at that. And so to get a natural expression, and then to reproduce it, and then get the likeness, it's almost everything else is kind of secondary to that. And but the values are great. I don't really see any glaring problems. Here's the thing, is that if you were to take this image and blow it up and make it life-size and laminate it and do some color checking on here, I could probably find a lot of little areas where your color checking is wrong.
Right.
And you have a long history with art, and I love this painting. I wouldn't change anything about it, which is kind of a weird thing, for me to say that. But what I mean is that there's two different ways that I can critique something. On the one hand, I can talk about what I like and, that I think the painting is successful as art, and then I can get into the nitpicky. So I can get into the nitpicky all day long, and if you were one of my students and you were doing this and this was your, you were starting off, I would, and taking my class, you would have failed. Okay, because I would have gone in and I would have found all these little value problems, and I'd say, when you want to be creative, save that for later. Save that for when you're doing your own thing. And so I don't want to really get into a lot of hardcore. Is that?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. 'Cause you're trying to learn a skill in your class.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I don't. It's one of the things. Let me just tell you what I think you got right, and this is just me. Right now, this occurred to me. And that is that you've got a lot of abstraction in here. I mean, even the texture on the surface, you're doing your own thing. There's all this noise. You didn't go in and smooth it out. The colors are separated. And so the average, you've made all these little teeny value mistakes, right? But the average of all that is pretty good.
Yeah.
And so therefore, it works. And so that's kind of the thing. You can, in other words, if you make a mistake a little bit too light here and a little bit too dark there, and you've got this pattern, but the whole average of it all works. And so I think that's anyway, what can I say? I really like it.
Well,
and
thanks.
it's great. And just, I coming from a portrait artist, somebody who's, I'm extremely picky about what I like when it comes to portraits.
I've seen a lot of judged competitions and things of that nature with the National Portrait Gallery and all this stuff to enter in different kind of competitions. I don't know if that's useful to put on a web page. And other than that, it's been in all these things.
It
Does
certainly
that help?
doesn't hurt. I have that's a tough one, because on the one hand, there's some legitimate shows out there,
Yeah.
The real big ones. And this is absolutely the game, this is where it becomes politics and everything else. So there's two sides to that. Number one, I would say that if you do enter those shows, don't think that the people judging those shows are the people that know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh,
Don't
yeah, I
don't
can
get
see
your
that.
feelings hurt when they don't pick you, because they may be looking for a certain political whatever. There's a lot of little things that they're, it may be that the judges don't even like high realism,
Yeah.
or that they don't like this or that, or so it's, and I don't really believe there's any authority out there anyway, and you should never have your feelings hurt. So, but a lot of people really, they enter those shows and they don't even get picked, and it really hurts them, and it really makes them reconsider, whether they're any good or not. And that's definitely not the case, That's number one. Number two, when you do enter those shows, pick the ones that you feel like you're going to fit, it doesn't hurt, but man, it's too bad that those shows are. I've been to some of these, competitions where students of mine have been entered, and when you listen to the reasons why they think somebody is a great artist or not, it's just but that's just me being. I don't know.
One thing about them is they're relatively cheap enough to enter, most of them.
Yeah, I don't really know. I don't know what the answer to that is. I tend to say to hell with those shows and just plow ahead and keep painting great paintings, and then you'll be noticed. But there's a certain amount of, in my own career, I had a lot of help because my father was connected politically, and so that sort of opened some doors for me. And then once I got those doors opened, then those VIP people that I was painting became my, promoters.
That was a question.
And so, and that gets to my point, and that is what you can do is you can do free paintings.
That was my question, because...
Absolutely.
And, exactly.
No, find out, and that's what I did. My very first commissioned portrait that I ever did was of the Swiss ambassador to the United States. And he was there. They had the city that I was living in at the time, Birmingham, Alabama, was doing a sister city thing with a city over in Switzerland. And they flew him down to give a little talk at some whatever the heck it was. I don't even remember. And I found out about it, and I said, hey, how about you guys, don't you want to give him a free portrait? And that was just so that I could say that I'd painted the Swiss ambassador, which wasn't a real big deal. But to me at that time, when I was 25 years old, that was a huge deal. So yeah, you can just, because in the portrait world, absolutely, it's all about who you painted, much more than how well you paint.
Yeah.
And political world.
Yeah, and as far as lighting and taking pictures, to get a good picture, if you have, just a small amount of time with somebody like that.
Yeah.
Like I could set this up. I had plenty of time. It was my son, I had another person holding the light. I didn't even have a real light thing.
Yeah. Well, what I do is, number one is I always wanted to paint my paintings and have them look like, I always say Sargent, but, those old paintings. And so they didn't have lights in those days.
Okay.
So I thought to myself, first thing I'm going to do is have when I walk into a house, I never had a formula. It was always about discovery. Because as soon as you come in with your filming lights and you put one here and one here, you're going to get the same thing every time. It's going to look like the regular old light that you see over and over again, which may be good and it may be safe, but all your paintings, you're not going to have all those interesting. Some of the best lighting I ever, found in my paintings was absolutely, well, every one of them really was just discovery. It was me walking in, noticing, having the person stand in a million spots in the room and looking and just staring at their face or looking through a rolled up magazine and just asking myself, do I like that? And then moving and saying, look here, and then walking all around them, having them rotate, stand here, stand there, and just look for it. And it's really just a matter of... I remember seeing that
video with your painting you did of your wife. I actually bought that video. It was really
very
good.
The downloadable one.
Yeah, exactly. And I did not see any lights in it. You were just walking around.
Yeah.
somebody asked me, would you like your own children to get into art, or become an artist? In fact, one of my students in my private class asked me, I think like last week, that. And I never really thought about it like that, because I kind of let my kids, they do, what they want to do. And my third son is an animator he's in Los Angeles. And so some of his stuff, it's a kind of a different type of art. But he knows, I've made it very clear to him that, like, it's a very tough way to make a living. And I don't mean to be pessimistic.
No.
I just mean, here's the other thing is, this should be the good news. And the good news is you don't have to think about all the political stuff. You can do those things, like we talked about, but basically focus on the quality of your work. Just blow everybody away. Make it so they can't ignore you.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then the rest of it, there's some things you can do. Yeah, so you like to paint, the Geneva paint?
I love it. I really do. Oh my gosh,
Have you used
what a
the
difference.
new formula?
I just ordered a couple with the new formula, and I ordered the
stain.
stain.
Yeah, you'll love the stain.
And that is great. I did already stained one
And
canvas.
you do it with a thin coat, like I said.
Yeah.
Do a super thin coat and then another super thin coat. And then, but our new paint, we've literally doubled the pigment load. Well, I just want to thank Stephen for taking part in the show and for bringing his work in so that you guys could check it out. And also, very quickly, thank you to everybody for all the wonderful reviews we're getting at genevafineart.com and for submitting those, taking the time to submit those. If you go to genevafineart.com and you want to read any of those reviews, just go to any product page and just keep scrolling down and it'll come to the reviews on that product. Also, our easels are in full production now, and we're getting even some good reviews on our easel. So thank you for that, and we'll see you guys next time.